it's little after 1, and we're going to go ahead and get started and kind of keep everybody on time. So here's kind of the agenda for the day. Opening remarks. I'm going to give a few updates from the WMAs. We call some of the presidents. I knew they probably didn't want to speak on here, but I'm going to give a few of those. Then we've got Miss Tiffany, our Texas A&M lawyer, and yes, she is a lawyer, but we don't hold that against us. She works for us, and so she's going to give us about a 30-minute presentation. Then we're going to hear some updates from our game wardens and actually get to see their faces, a lot of us for the first time. Then Miss Joyce is going to give us our harvest recommendations pretty broadly. Since we have all 4 associations on this today, we're going to do stuff in broad strokes today. And then last, I'm going to talk about the harvest books and last year's harvest data broadly. So here's some updates from the WMAs. I talked with Cade Burrow. He's the new president over there at Cave Creek, and they will be having their opening weekend activities, their Friday night social and meal, their big buck contest, and their raffle. Also, they are still planning on the youth hunt. They are working on some protocols on how they might hold that to meet some of the COVID restrictions. They're probably going to reduce the size. They may try to house some of the kids at the individual ranches. And so if you've been a part of that or want to help out with that there at Cave Creek, you can give Ronnie Ottmers a call there, and his phone number is listed. Or if you don't get it down, just call up here at the office and we can get it to you later. Cherry Springs, they're still planning to do their youth hunt on the second week in January. And Alice is still their secretary. They had a meeting the other week to elect a new secretary, and good to see they got Alice to stay on. And then Harper, talked with them a little bit today. Their youth hunt is still on. I know they're trying to figure out what kind of regulations they're going to need to follow as well. And so they're here for the youth hunt. And also they wanted to just point out that the CWD area is in Segovia. It's just west of our association, but some of those in eastern Kimball County that are part of our association may want to stay on the lookout for some weak deer. And Joyce might give us a little bit of update in her time on that area out there. Doss, we didn't get a hold of Corey, and that was my fault. I didn't try until this morning. We've heard their youth hunt is probably canceled. So if somebody has some advice on that later in the program, y'all can beam in and give us a little more information on that. So all right. Well, our presenter today here is very special to have Miss Tiffany Dow, and she is right now. Said it was 19 degrees up there. I believe you're out of the Amarillo office, right, Tiffany? And I am going to new share. Whoop, I'm gonna. Excuse me, and my computer might explode. I'm going to stop sharing and let Tiffany get on. There you go, Tiffany.
Okay, great. Get this set up. All right. Can you guys see my screen?
Now we can. Looks like we're good, okay. Tiffany.
Perfect. Sounds great. Well, thank you for letting me be here. I certainly wish I was with you in Fredericksburg today instead of in the Arctic North that is the Panhandle right now. But I'm excited to be here to talk a little bit about negotiating hunting leases. I think this is a really important topic. We're going to just hit on some of the high notes kind of here as we go. A couple of housekeeping items. If you guys have questions as we go along, feel free to type them in the chat box. I'm more than happy to try to answer those, either as we go or when I'm finished. Also, at the end, if we have time, I'll try to take some questions at that point as well. We'll let Brad sort of tell us how we're at. The other thing is, if anybody wants a copy of the slides today, Brad has those and he can email them to you, or you can contact me and I'll be glad to get them to you as well. So with that, let me move this. Okay. A couple of things. If you guys are interested in agricultural law at all, I've got a blog that I will at least mention. It's the Texas Agriculture Law blog. You can Google that, or that's the address there at the top. Essentially, I just post ag law information there. So anytime I do like a checklist or a handbook, or if there's a new case that comes out that's important, I just do a little blurb on it. So if you're interested, go there and check that out. When you get there, a little pop-up box comes up. I know that that's annoying, but if you'll put your email address in there and subscribe, then anytime I do a new post, it comes right to your email. So you don't have to remember to go check. And I post about once a week. So if you're interested, check that out. Hopefully that will be useful to you all. And then I also have a podcast. So if you're a podcast listener, you can listen on any of your normal, channels, Apple Podcast, iTunes, Stitcher, any of that. It's called Ag Law in the Field. If you've never heard of a podcast or any of that mumbo jumbo I just gave you, don't worry. You can listen on your computer if you want to. What it is it's just I interview another ag lawyer about a different topic every time. It's free to listen to. They usually last around 45 minutes to an hour. All you have to do is go to that address there at the top, aglaw.libsyn.com. You'll see a list of programs and you can scroll down and listen to whatever you want. We've covered everything from, estate planning to fence law to water law. We've done hunting leases. We've done landowner liability, kind of the gamut. So feel free to check that out if that's something that you might be interested in. The next thing is I have to give a disclaimer when I speak. It basically says I'm a lawyer, but I'm not your lawyer. So I'm going to give you some general information today, but I can't give anybody specific legal advice. So with that, let's get started and talk about some of the key terms you want to consider when you're drafting a hunting license. You'll see the little asterisk there and you may think, wait a minute, why is she calling that a license instead of a lease? If we want to get really technical, like nerdy lawyer, when you do a hunting lease, we all call them that, it really is a license. And the reason is technically a lease gives somebody sole possession of the property, right? So if you do sign an apartment lease with somebody, you're giving them sole and exclusive possession of that apartment for that time period. That's not what we're doing with a hunting lease, right? Really, we should be calling those a hunting license. Just giving someone the right to enter your property and to undertake a certain activity. Does it really matter? Probably not. A lawyer would like for it to say license just because we don't have an argument that there might be some sort of additional rights in there. That said, throughout the presentation, I'm probably going to call it a hunting lease because that's just what we all call it. So, but be aware that technically it's a license. I would probably title it as such. Okay, the first thing I want to say about a hunting lease is you need to have one and you need to have it written down. All right, and I know that for some of you, you're rolling your eyes and you're thinking, why do lawyers make everything more complicated than it has to be? Okay, and I know that you're thinking that because my dad acts the exact same way. In fact, we had hunters at our house this weekend. We sold a couple of mule deer hunts for the opening weekend in New Mexico. And my dad basically took them the documents that I drafted, handed them to them and said, my kid is a lawyer. If you don't sign these, she'll never get off my back. And they signed them. So you know what, whatever works. Okay. It's really important to get some documents from your hunters. They're not legally required, but it's really smart to have them. So here's what I would do. The first thing is, in order to know who you need to have sign certain documents, you need to know who's going to show up and be present on your property, right? So you and I both know, right? If I sign a hunting lease with Brad and say, okay, Brad, you can come and hunt deer, Brad may show up by himself, but a lot of times Brad may show up with 6 other people that are coming with him, right? And so as a landowner, you need to know who's going to come on your property. A, to know who's there, but B, to make sure you can get the right documentation. So one thing that I recommend in a lease is to require written approval from the landowner for any guests to attend. That just makes sure that you know, again, who's going to be there and you can track down those folks and get the documents signed that you need. As far as which documents you need, the lawyer in me says you need to have 3 pieces of paper from everybody who's coming on the property. A signed hunting lease, a general liability waiver, sometimes you'll see that called a liability release, and the Texas Agritourism Act waiver. We're going to talk more about that in a minute. Okay, so those are the 3 documents that your lawyer is going to tell you you ought to have in place. Okay, if I take off my lawyer hat and I put on my rural landowner hat, I know that I'm not going to probably make everybody sign these documents. Right? We have a neighbor who comes and hunts on us every year. He's hunted for 30 years. My dad's not going to make him sign anything. And so you've got to sort of weigh the risk, right? And you can make the decision you want on who you kind of enforce this with. I would suggest two things. One of them is if you're taking money, right? If somebody's paying you, I would want to have a written lease. The other is if you don't know them very well, right? So like, for example, our hunting leases that we sold for last weekend, we sold in an online sale, just like we sell like our show lambs online. We did a hunting lease sale. We did not know these people from Adam. They're signing all these documents. Our neighbor didn't sign anything. All right, so there's got to kind of weigh that out there. As far as the liability waiver goes, right? So I said you need to have your hunting lease, a general liability waiver, and the Agritourism Act waiver. Let's talk about that general liability waiver. In general, in Texas, those can be enforceable if they're done correctly and if the injured party is an adult. Okay, so we're going to talk about what we have to do to have these drafted correctly. But I want to flag here for you, it says if the injured party is an adult. The Texas Supreme Court has never ruled on this, but there's some question about whether or not an adult can sign a liability waiver on behalf of a minor and have that be enforceable. So we don't know what the Texas Supreme Court would say. We know that some lower level courts in Texas have said we're not going to enforce those. If it's a kid that's injured, we're not enforcing your waiver. So I still get them. If it's me and we're going to have somebody under 18, I go ahead and have the parent sign a waiver on their behalf. I just sort of know in the back of my head it may or may not be enforceable. All right. Again, you want to make sure everybody who's coming on the property signs a waiver. This is something I would use a lawyer to draft. I'll tell you, look, not everything in the law is tricky enough that you need an attorney. This is, and really it's just because courts are so particular about what the language needs to say. And so I'd hire an attorney to draft you a liability waiver. And listen, I know nobody wants to spend money at the lawyer, okay? But a couple of things. The first one is if you use a lawyer who does a lot of these, they've kind of got a standard form. They're just going to tweak that for you. It should not be crazy expensive to get that done. The other thing is the law on this doesn't change very often. And so you probably can get you a liability waiver written this year and just use that same form year after year. And so if you look at it kind of on a cost per year basis, that can make it you can rationalize spending that money a little bit better. As far as what the waiver has to be valid, the first rule is it has to be unambiguous. That means that it has to expressly say in there, I, the hunter, release the landowner from any claim for negligence. It has to say like those words, right? I release the claims or I waive my claims for negligence. And so again, there's just some magic language there that you have to have. It also needs to be signed at or near the time of the activity. There's no cases that tell us what that means. We get ours redone every year. So if we've got the same deer hunter that comes every fall, we have him sign the waiver every fall. Okay, it also has to be conspicuous. That means do not hide this in the fine print, right? It cannot be page 5 of your hunting lease. It needs to be a separate piece of paper in big bold letters. It needs to say, waiver of liability or release of liability. All right, you don't want somebody to argue that they didn't know what they were signing. Okay? As far as minor children go, again, I don't know if this is enforceable or not. Frankly, we just don't know from the Texas Supreme Court. What I do in my waivers is I require there to be adult supervision at all times of anybody under 18. I say that this adult supervisor is responsible for any injuries that occur to the minor. And then I require the adult to indemnify or hold harmless the landowner. Essentially, right, I'm putting the liability on the adult supervisor instead of on me. And so, again, I don't know what a court would do with that, but that's sort of what I try and do. Okay, so that is liability waivers. The next thing let's talk about is price, okay? there's a lot of chat about, what should we charge for hunting leases. It's hard to find solid data on that. You want to think about how you're going to calculate the lease. Is it going to be on a per acre basis? Some places that's really popular. Is it going to be on a per gun basis? Is it going to just be a flat fee? Right. I know somebody who guides hunts out in Alpine, and he charges, so much per hunt. So there's different ways to do that. How and when the rent is due. Is it going to be due, in a lump sum prior to the season? Can they make installment payments throughout the year? I think most people want to have that payment made, obviously, before hunting season starts, but how you set that up before that, I don't think really matters. You may want to require a security deposit from the hunters to cover any damages that they cause. Again, I probably wouldn't do that if it's my neighbor that's hunting, but if it's somebody I don't know, I probably am going to really look into some kind of security deposit, right? And that's just like with an apartment. If they don't tear anything up, they get it back. So as far as hunting rates go and what people charge, the only document that I know that publishes these is called the Texas Rural Land Trends Report. You can Google that, Texas Rural Land Trends. And they have some published info on hunting rates. I pulled the region of the state here that includes Gillespie County, and then kind of all these surrounding counties as well. Let me give you the data we have from this report. Okay, so if you look at the map here, the Eastern Hill Country is going to be these light pink counties on the bottom that includes Gillespie, Kerr, Kendall, okay, that area. The average rental range there is $10 to $30 per acre for hunting on rangeland, right? Again, these are just published averages. I don't know if you may have very different experiences. I think especially in your part of the country, there can be some big differences on, how close you are to somewhere like Fredericksburg. If you've got the, hunting cabin, if you're cooking them meals, etc., that can really make a difference, right? The data is just a tick different in the Western Hill Country. So that would be like Mason, Menard, and Kimball County. That rate shows $15 to $25. If you look at the Southern Grand Prairie area, that's going to be up there like Brown County, Erath, Callahan, Coleman. They're showing $10 to $25 an acre. And then if you look at the Central Basin, that's going to be like San Saba, Llano, Lampasas. They show $7 to $25 an acre. So again, there's at least some range for you from this publication. I don't know of any other publication that expressly lists out hunting rates in Texas. So hopefully that's helpful. Another thing that you want to include in your lease is a description of the property covered by the lease. And so that's just going to be sort of what I tell people is if you don't list limitations, you can kind of assume that they don't exist, right? So in a hunting lease, you want to be very clear on where they can be, right? Make the boundaries very delineated and clear where they're allowed to hunt, what they're allowed to hunt, that they're only allowed to hunt, right? They're not allowed to come out and do other things. You want to spell all that out. As far as what may be done or may not be done by the hunter, fires, that's a big one, at least in our part of the world, right? Most leases up here say no open flames. Blinds and tree stands, can they use them? If they can, when can they put them out? When do they need to be off? Same question with feeders. We get a lot of questions about deer feeders. Can they use ATVs? That may be an important question to have there. If you look at the statistics on hunting lease accidents, I looked this up several years ago. The most common injury came from ATVs. It wasn't from somebody getting shot or whatever. So just kind of keep that in mind. Are there any areas of the property that are excluded? Where can the property be accessed? Do you want everybody coming in and out of a certain gate or anything like that? That can be important if you've got multiple hunters coming in. And then is anybody else going to have rights? It's a really good idea to make sure your hunters are aware of other surface users that might be on the property and that those other surface users are aware of the hunters, right? Because what you don't want is your hunter chasing off your grazing tenant thinking he's doing you a favor, right? And he really just caused you a big headache. So keep that in mind as well. Here's a few just hunting specific considerations. You may want to set a designated area for cleaning and carcass disposal. Think about if you want to require information about animals that they may have harvested on your property. For example, we require photos and measurements of any deer that are taken off of our place. And frankly, we use that for advertising the hunts next year. And that's why we would require those. Some people have limited the ability of hunters to post photos on social media. You see that sometimes people that are worried about, like PETA getting involved and giving somebody some hassle. During COVID, I think there have been some concerns about that with some of the restrictions that are going on. People have not wanted stuff to be plastered all over Facebook about who's hunting where. So that might be something you could think about. Another common clause is you're not going to warranty success, right? We're not going to guarantee that you're going to get a deer if you come hunting here. Another one that's a big one for us is liquidated damage clauses for livestock. You'll see that picture in the corner there, right? It was posted on Facebook and it said, cattle ranchers getting ready for hunting season, right? And they spray painted cow on the side. What liquidated damage clauses do, essentially what that says is you contractually agree that if the hunters kill or injure an animal, they're going to pay you X amount. And that just avoids the argument, right, where they think that your cow is like worth $900 at the sale barn, and you think your cow was going to probably win Denver, right, if they hadn't canceled it, and you think she's worth $50,000 and we fight about it. You could just have in there, if a cow is killed or injured by the hunters, it costs this much money. And we spell that out at our house. We spell out cows, bulls, we have sheep. So we have sheep, rams, and horses. If those are injured, we have specific set prices for those, just to avoid that argument. Okay. And my favorite thing about that picture there that they painted cow on the side of, that's a bull, which I think makes it even funnier. Okay. The next thing we can look at is your lease needs to have liability and indemnification clauses. What that is, the liability clause just basically says that the landowner is not liable for the acts of the tenant or the hunter, and vice versa, right? We're just not liable for the acts of the other party. And then an indemnification clause goes kind of a step further and says, in the event that we do get sued, right? If I'm the landowner and I get sued for something that the hunter did, the hunter's going to indemnify me. That means he's going to hold me harmless. He's going to pay for my attorney. He's going to pay any judgment against me. That will be his responsibility, not mine. All right, so you want to have those in there just because if an injury happens on the property where somebody is hunting, the odds are the landowner is going to be a named defendant. Even if you weren't negligent, even if you get dismissed out of the case, the odds of you being a defendant are probably fairly high. Okay, the next thing I want to hit on really quick, and I'm going to do just a brief overview of these, is there are two limited liability statutes here in Texas that actually protect landowners who open up their properties for certain activities like hunting. All right? These just essentially offer you some essentially free limited liability if you meet the requirements. Okay, so let's look at those. The first one's called the recreational use statute. And the recreational use statute says that if somebody gets injured on your property, you are only liable for intentional acts or gross negligence if you meet three requirements. Okay? And intentional acts or gross negligence is a super high standard. In fact, that's the standard we hold trespassers to. It's very hard for somebody who gets injured to prove that that landowner acted intentionally or with gross negligence. All right? So this is good for landowners. And the standard applies if you can prove three things. The first is you have agricultural land. There are pieces of this that apply to non-ag land, but we're not going to get into that today. All right, so if you've got land that is suitable for growing crops, raising livestock, or forestry, it qualifies. Okay, it says suitable for. I don't care if you're doing it, and I don't care what the appraisal district says. All right, suitable for. The next thing is the injured party was there for a recreational purpose. Hunting is included. Okay, and then third, you've got to meet one of the next three monetary options. The first option is if you don't charge a fee. Okay, so if you let your neighbor hunt on your ranch for free, you've met all three requirements, the recreational use statute applies, and you're not liable unless they can prove intentional acts or gross negligence. Okay? The second option is if the total charges for the past calendar year for all recreational use is less than 20 times the amount of ad valorem taxes last year. In English, what that says is, get a piece of paper, add up all the money you made in 2019 from recreational users. Anybody that paid you to hunt or fish or picnic or ride four-wheelers, get a total. In another column, you're going to add up all the property taxes you paid anywhere in Texas. Not just your hunting ranch, anywhere in Texas. Get a total. As long as the income is not 20 times more than the taxes, this statute applies. Okay? Most people fit there. You got to make a lot of money from this for that not to work. Or your third option is if you carry liability insurance of at least $500,000 per person, $1 million per occurrence, and $100,000 for property damage. If you have that level of insurance or higher, the statute applies. We don't care how much you charge. All right? That's the whole statute. You don't have to do anything else. There's no other hoops to jump through. There's no exceptions. If you're going to have hunters on your property, you need to make sure this applies. It's too easy not to make sure you get that benefit. Okay? The second statute overlaps some, but it's a separate statute, separate defense. It's called the Agritourism Act. All right, and I'm not going to walk through all of these, but essentially what this says is if you have people come on your agricultural land for a recreational or educational purpose, so it's a little broader there, it says or educational, you're not liable for their injuries if you hang up a sign or get an Agritourism Act waiver. Okay, so you're going to have to affirmatively do something here, but you're not liable if you take these steps. The first option is if you get a sign. All right, I just copied and pasted this right from the statutes. Has to be at a clearly visible location on or near where the activity is conducted. You can make your own. A bunch of groups sell them. I know Farm Bureau has them. I think Gillespie County Farm Bureau actually has some. Cattle raisers, sheep and goat raisers, Texas Wildlife Association, they've all got them for sale. So you can buy that and hang it up. Or you can get the Agritourism Act release. Okay, and here's that language. You have to print it in at least 10-point bold font, and it needs to be separate from any other agreement. So again, I copied and pasted this right from the statutes. Okay, have them sign it. All right, and you can do either or. You can do the sign or the waiver. The one place I like the waiver better is for minor children. Okay, remember earlier we said under that general waiver, we don't know if a court will enforce it or not. In this waiver, the legislature expressly said it could be signed by the parent, guardian, or managing conservator, which I think is really good evidence that this should be enforceable even if it's an injured minor. So if you've got kids under 18, I would make sure I got this release. Otherwise, I like the sign because I can just kind of hang it up and forget about it. Okay, that's the Agritourism Act. There's a list of exceptions. We're not going to go through these. Let the lawyers fight about those. You spend the $5 and hang up the sign. Okay, the last thing that I want to mention, and then I'm going to try to take questions if you've got any, is there's a requirement to have a hunting lease license. The game wardens can probably talk more about this, but in general, if you're a landowner that's entering into a hunting lease, and you're obtaining anything of value in return, you're supposed to have a hunting lease license from Texas Parks and Wildlife each year. It has to be displayed on the lease. All the game wardens I've talked to have basically told me, so long as somebody can show it to us if we ask for it, that's good enough. You don't have to like actually, nail it up to the fence or anything like that. Not having one can be a Class C misdemeanor. You can face a $500 fine. Here's the cost for a general license. I just pulled this up. There are some different prices if you've got a Wildlife Management Association, and I think that that's kind of the groups we're talking to here today. So those prices may be a tick different for you all, but just be aware that that is a requirement. Okay, I know that was fast and furious. I could talk about this stuff for about 5 hours, and I had 30 minutes. So hopefully, though, that kind of gave you a start. If you guys have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat box. I'm going to put a link there to my blog and my podcast. The other item that I'll pitch to you on hunting leases is we've got a handbook that's called our Ranchers Leasing Handbook. It's available, a PDF you can get for free on our website, or you can purchase a hard copy if you contact me. It's got some sample hunting lease language in there and a checklist for drafting a hunting lease. So if you're interested in that, let us know. And with that, I'll take any questions that you guys have or any comments from Brad.
Tiffany, put a shout out for your online course, or if you haven't already.
Oh, yeah. Thanks. So we also have an online course. It's available on demand. It's called the Ranchers Leasing Workshop. Essentially, it covers grazing, hunting, and livestock leases, as well as landowner liability. It's about a 3-hour class. You can sign up and watch it on demand anytime you want. You can go at your own pace. It's videos of us in a studio doing the presentations. If you're interested, I'll be glad to get you the link for that. We were supposed to host one of those in Fredericksburg last month, and then, the world shut down. So luckily, we got the online option. If you need the information, feel free to contact me. I'll be glad to get that to you.
Well, maybe you did such a great job. Nobody has any questions, or their brains are fried, one of the two.
That, or I was going to say I exploded everyone's brains.
Question in the chat.
I don't see it. Donna's telling me there's a question in the chat, but I don't see it.
Oh, someone asked, is CWD chronic wasting disease? I don't think I use that acronym, but yes, that would be an acronym for chronic wasting disease.
Okay. Donna's got a question. Hold on. She got a question sent to her privately. What she said, somebody asked, was that they have the agritourism signs on all gates entering their pastures. Is that overkill, or do you just need one where they enter?
Listen, you know that a lawyer's never going to tell you something's overkill, right? I like it on every gate for hunters, because that way, no matter where they come in, they would see it. And so I think that that's smart to have it on every gate.
Okay, that's what I would have said too.
Also, Brad, I put a link to that online Ranchers Leasing Workshop in the chat box there. So if anybody wants the link there, that is.
Okay.
And I also put a link to the handbook as well.
There we go. So if you've got your chat box open, you ought to just be able to click on those links, and then you can open them in your server or in your web browser, and that way you'll have them. So for those of you that are watching. Well, Tiffany, it looks like you did such a great job. We don't have a lot of questions, and so we're going to move on. And we know we're going to have Tiffany back here in Fredericksburg to do her leasing workshop, hopefully this fall, if everything goes right. We was thinking maybe even later this spring, or later next spring. not this fall. I guess we're already in the fall, but hopefully later next spring. I'm losing track of time. But if not, whenever our regulations kind of move away, we're going to try to get Tiffany down here. And we really appreciate you, Tiffany, taking time out of your day. And next time, hopefully you can be in Fredericksburg when you give this presentation.
Yeah, sounds great, Brad. If you guys have questions after this, feel free to email me. I'll be glad to help however I can.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sure.
All right. Well, I'm going to go back and share my screen. We hadn't put nobody to sleep yet, have we? Good deal. Well, just as we move forward, I want to thank some of our partners today, and I probably put this slide in a little too early, but we've got a lot of partners here that help our WMAs happen, and some that give us some free advertisement. And, of course, we've got Joyce with Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, and also the game wardens that are always ever helpful and willing to help us out. The Gillespie County Farm Bureau, usually we have our yearly meeting there, and they're always gracious to donate that to us. And again, they probably have the agritourism signs there. You might contact the Farm Bureau and see what they have. Next year, hopefully, we're going to be in our new building, and we will just have it there at our new office there at 38 Business Court. It's over kind of at the old entrance to the airport. If you're going down Tabadale, it'll be the next left-hand turn after the fairgrounds entrance. And so it's kind of down by where you used to turn in to go to the airport many, many years ago. We also want to thank our Gillespie County Commodity Association. This is kind of the predator board here in the county. I know a lot of the WMAs here in the county do financially support this association, and they pay bounties on feral hogs and coyotes and also red foxes, I believe bobcats, and even mountain lions. And this association is well needed here in the county. And they did raise the bounty from $2.50 per hogtail up to $5. So if you need more information on that, give us a shout here at the Extension office. We can help you out. Our Gillespie County Wild Game Dinner, it's going to happen this year at a reduced setting. I think they're going to have about 1,000 people that are going to attend that they're going to sell tickets online. So if that's something you've been looking for, you might check that out and make sure you get your ticket bought. It is Gillespie County Wild Game Dinner raises a ton of money for our different for agriculture education here, mostly with youth, but they do fund some other things, and they are a huge sponsor of a lot of our 4-H programs, our FFA programs, our BB gun, our shooting sports. So we really wanted to give a shout out to them. Fredericksburg Standard Times is always there to print any articles or show any pictures. They also printed the Hill Country Hunting Guide, and if you look through that, I think they have stories on the wildlife management associations. And so we want to thank the Fredericksburg Standard Times for all the free advertisement that they give us and the recognition that they give us. And then last, KNAF Radio 910, always putting our radio spots on whenever we have anything for free. And so we definitely want to appreciate all of those partners out there that help make Extension possible, and also the Wildlife Management Associations possible. So it looks like next we're up to Mr. Fleming and Mr. Tommy Johnson. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can put some faces with our new game wardens. And right there we have Mr. Tommy, looks like on my screen, but go ahead, whoever's going to give a shout out there.
How's everybody doing today?
We're good, Tommy. We're good. So how long have you been on board here in Gillespie County?
I just actually transferred to Gillespie County. Been a game warden. I've been in law enforcement for 30 years and 8 years as a game warden. I transferred from Matagorda to Mason County and now to Gillespie. All
right. So do you live here in the county, Tommy, yet?
Yep. Yes, sir. I live over off the Window Loop in Harper area.
Okay. Good deal. All right.
Yes,
Dustin, are you up?
Yes, sir. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. A lot like Tommy, I'm new to the area, but my experience is not 22 years plus. This will be my first duty station as a game warden. My background is spent some time in the Marine Corps. And so transition from the Marine Corps directly to Texas Parks and Wildlife, and then moving my family to Fredericksburg. So we are excited to be here, be a part of the community, and look forward to being here a long time. Good
deal. Dustin, Tommy, anything we need to look out for this year? Any new regulations or anything that might get us in a bind, or anything y'all want to promote?
No, I mean, everything's basically still the same. One of the big deals is, the harvest log. Make sure your hunters fill that out and cut the date out of the tags, and have the deer tagged at least when they get to camp. That's kind of the 3 things that we see people mess up on the most. Pull up there and deer's been hanging half a day without a tag on it, something like that.
Yeah, gotcha. Just to reiterate what Tommy said, I shared my screen. So a lot of people may or may not know about the harvest log. On the back of the license, as you can see on my screen,
Tommy, Dustin, you hadn't shared it yet, so you might try it again. Okay. I don't know if I made you a co-host, or I'm just seeing your face, so not a.
Okay. Let's see here. Can you see it now, or no?
I cannot.
Okay. Anyways, we'll wing it from here. But on the back of a hunting license, you'll see that in the middle section is your harvest log, and it's just where you killed it, what ranch it was on, buck or doe, and the date in the county area. So it just gives it gives us an opportunity to track what was harvested for that year. And that's something that it's an educational point of reference that we like to hit on that, but also we've seen that for multiple times, going forward. And so make sure that when you do have hunters and if you do talk to them and they've harvested something that, that you encourage them to fill out that harvest log. So that's a big thing. I would say one of the things that you see often.
Okay. Well, good deal. Well, we want to welcome you all to Gillespie County, and glad y'all could join us today. And I know we'll look forward to having y'all at some of our future meetings when we actually get to meet in person. So thank you guys. Yes, appreciate y'all's time for being here. And we got any questions for the game wardens right quick?
Yep.
Yeah, you showed their phone numbers a few seconds ago, but you didn't leave it on long enough for us to write it down.
I'm going to go back that screen. 1 second, Vernon.
That'll be fine. Thank you, sir.
All right, there we go. Dusty, Tommy, are those 2 phone numbers right? I pulled them off the Parks and Wildlife website, so hope I could share them.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So who's got the 2 o'clock calls? Either one of you? 2 a.m. calls. Let me restate that.
I guess I'm
Tommy might put a little seniority rank there.
That's it. Yeah, I handle most of this.
No.
It's
all
good.
Right.
Tommy brings a wealth of experience in, and he's going to help benefit this county and help benefit me as a game warden, and look forward to that. And we're excited to be here, and I know it's a great county, great area to be, and if we can do anything for y'all, give us a call. We work for the landowner, so that's an important relationship, and we look to develop those as much as possible.
Brad,
on a note to that, we caught our first night hunters last week. I said on a note to that, we caught our first night hunters in the county last weekend. We put 3 in jail for killing a doe at night. So we're out. If y'all need anything, give us a call. Y'all see any activity or anything like that?
Good deal. Thank you, guys. We got any more questions right quick?
Yeah, Brad, Michelle was asking who the game wardens were in Campbell County.
That'll be us.
That'll be us. We're covering that county.
Okay, great.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
All
Thanks for
right.
having us on, Brad.
Appreciate it. See you guys. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
But
Thank you.
our next is up is Miss Joyce Moore, our Texas Parks and Wildlife biologist. She's gonna go over our harvest recommendations, like I said, with broad strokes. So just briefly, Donna emailed out all the harvest recommendations. Some of you just may have got some of those this morning via email. Some of the other ones, if you're on this, you probably have access to email and you probably received them by email. Those that do not have an email, we're going to mail them out, hard mail them out. If all that goes wrong, you can always stop by the office here and pick up a copy. So, Miss Joyce, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Brad. And thank you, Donna, for sending those out. You should have received the harvest recommendations that we normally do in person. But this is a kind of a strange year for everything. And so we're having to learn new ways. I'm not going to talk about the individual associations. I'm going to try and talk about some general data where they all seem to have the same information. All 4 of our wildlife associations this year, when I calculate this information, I'm looking at data from spotlight surveys that the members conduct, and that they've been conducting these same surveys for a number of years. But there are some similarities across all of these associations. And normally speaking, what we're finding is that the density and the number of animals out there on the range exceeds the carrying capacity of the habitat. And so every association this year, all 4, all came out within a few decimal points of each other on density, and that is acres per deer. They all range around 3 acres per deer, 3 to 4 acres per deer, which is a very high deer density. We have too many deer, basically, and so what we're encouraging is an increase in harvest. But where they also are very similar is in the amount of does on those wildlife associations. And so it's not the bucks that are the problem. We have too many does, too many antlerless deer. And so all of those numbers ranged from 3 to 4 does per buck. And so what that means is we've got too big girls in this population, and that's causing some problems. And I know I met with Cherry Spring this year. This is the only group I actually got to meet with because of COVID. But what they commented to me was, and maybe some of the rest of you have noticed this, we have a large disparity in the fawn size. The number of the fawns, we have some really old fawns that are no longer spotted, can't even tell the difference between them and their mama. We also have some very young fawns, very spotted, very born late in the season, the fawning season. And what this is happening is we have so many does in this population in Gillespie County that it causes our does to cycle, and there's so many to pick from out there that the rutting activity, the breeding activity is stretched out over a longer period of time. And that's causing us to have these extended fawn crops that start in April, May, still ongoing in October. And that's because of the number of does in this herd, in this population. And so one of the reasons that we would like for you to try and get your hunters to harvest does is because we know biologically that a deer herd operates at peak performance when there's about an even number, a balanced ratio of males to females. It's not like your cattle herd. Deer herd is different. And so, but almost all of the associations showed a 1-to-3 ratio, or 1-to-4 ratio, meaning bucks to doe. And so that's another reason why we want you to harvest those extra surplus animals, which are doe. The other thing that I've noticed on the data this year, The only association that had a low fawn survival rate was Cave Creek, and I think that was probably an anomaly. But the other 3 associations all showed between 40 and 45% fawn survival, which is good. That's the county average. That's the hill country average, 40 to 50%. And the only problem with that is we tend to have those fawns, we just aren't able to raise them because of the food supply issues, and that's always limited, and that's because too many mouths on the range. So we encourage the hunters, if they're not going to mount that animal, if they're just shooting it for meat, they should be shooting antlerless deer, females, does, because we have an abundance of those, we have a major surplus, and we need to balance those ratios out. Just tell a little bit about range conditions and what hunters should expect to see in the field this year. We had a historic, almost massed production last year, an acorn crop that was off the charts in 2019. And what that did do for us was it sent our deer into the new year and they had great body condition. They were fat. And what it also did was that it allowed the hunters to not harvest a deer. I don't know if any of your hunters had trouble seeing animals at the feeder. I had a lot of reports from landowners that said, man, my hunters, if we wanted to shoot a doe, we had to do it somewhere away from a feeder and ambush those animals as they were passing to water some other way, because they just weren't coming to feeders. And the reason for that is, they had plenty to eat under the oak trees, and so they were utilizing that mass crop all the way into January of last year, almost through the entire hunting season. So what that did do for us, though, is it gave those bucks, because they weren't harvested, or very, very few were harvested. They were not over harvested like they typically are in this county. It allowed those animals to get one more year of growth on them, one more year of maturity. So what I'm expecting to see this hunting season, because our mass production is there, but it's not as great as it was last year. So I assume we're going to have a more deer harvest. But these deer should be older, and they should be 1 year older and more mature. And so we're going to be building age structure back into the herd, and that's a positive. That's a good thing. So they should be rewarded with some older deer, some better antlers, hopefully. We had a fairly dry summer, pretty hot, pretty dry. So the months of July, August, and even part of September, deer were stressed. We did have, like I said, out of average production, but we just had some issues with the fawns. We lost some fawns because of that, because of those tremendously hot temperatures. We had some areas and times where we did have a shower or two that broke those droughts. And so we were able to actually produce turkeys this year. We had a pretty decent turkey hatch. And so I'm hearing that from a lot of landowners too. So with back to deer again, respecting those, expect average antler quality this year on the bucks. Higher incidence of mature bucks because of that. Low hunter success last season. You might also expect to see more spikes this year because of that summer stress period that they experienced. And so it will be a good year to cull inferior bucks, because those deer are going to show their true colors this year. The inferior animals will, which sometimes that's not necessarily the case. Sometimes they'll be masked by environmental conditions. So we call those animals swing deer that they kind of go wherever the wind goes. In good years, they'll look better than normal, and it'll mask their inferior qualities. And then in years like this one, they'll show their true colors. So they'll be easier to identify for your hunters. Um, we want to make sure that everyone tries to target those females and look at your own ranch. The harvest recommendations that we make for the associations are very generic in nature. So we would suggest that each of you conduct some random sightings just while you're sitting in a feeder, out of your kitchen window while you're drinking coffee in the morning. Record that information and look at those ratios yourselves. And if you're seeing about an equal number of males to females, then you probably can harvest an equal number. But if you're not, and I almost would bet that you're not, then harvest accordingly is what I'm saying. Try and target single does, those that may not have bred and did not have a fawn. And so again, those are surplus. Try to identify all animals before they harvest them. Hunters often don't do that. They're focused only on the bucks, so they're not even looking at does, and does are almost an afterthought from what I can tell. When you're looking at those does, though, be sure to age those animals on the hoof, live age them, because right now what we're having is fawns that are very large, and they're going to easily be mistaken for a doe. It could be a nubbin buck fawn. So we don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot by taking those buck fawns before they're even a year of age. So get some of those aging charts that we've got available. And I think, Brad, you might have some there at your office. If not, Deedle Printing has some available that you can purchase, very nominal fee, that we've created, and they have them there, and they can print them for you, put them in your stands for the hunters so they can age some of these animals on the hoof before they pull the trigger. And also late in the season, and we do this sometimes with our youth hunts, in January, those fawns, those doe fawns, a few can be harvested, but we want to make sure we're shooting the right thing. So again, live aging those deer are very, very important. We don't want to shoot the young bucks, the nubbin bucks. That's really all I have, unless you have questions for me. And if you did not receive one of the actual harvest recommendations specific to your area, again, I can email it to you, or Donna can email it to you, or you could stop by and pick it up there at the AgriLife office. But thank you again, and keep up the good work.
All right. Well, we thank Joyce for all the work that she does. And do we have any questions? We probably won't go individually into each one. If you've got some questions, unless they're big and broad, give me a shout here and we can get them answered if it's on individual spotlight surveys or something like that. Well, all right. Well, Joyce, looks like you did such a good job too. We're going to move right along then. And again, the chat box is open there. So if you've got a question you think you might forget, please share it. And next, we're going to go over the harvest books themselves. If you happen to have yours in front of you, you can kind of go through it with me. But we did have somebody already present a question early on, so I'm going to try to hit that. But the first page is just a very generic page, and we used to put them in individual ranch names. And we run into a lot of headache when Miss Phyllis left. She knew everybody. She knew everybody's ranch. And it was amazing because of marriages here. We had the Greenwelgie Ranch being managed by a Welgie, and the Welgie Ranch managed by a Greenwelgie. And so our new office staff, it just got very tough to figure out who actually the lease license name was bought in. And so we just decided to change everything. We took the ranch names off. So when you sign up for a lease license, whoever signs that document puts down all their information. That's whose name it's going to come back in. That necessarily doesn't have to be maybe the person that managed the hunters. It just needs to be somebody associated with that piece of property. Could be a son, a nephew, or somebody that is active in the group, but it doesn't have to be the sole one managing the property. And I know when, it's some of these old Germans around here, those property ties can get pretty strong. And so we have to remind some of them that just because it has somebody else's name on there doesn't mean they're not in control. And so we want to reiterate that. We would like you to fill out this front page, put down the ranch name, the cabin, the pasture, if you need to, if that applies. We definitely want your email addresses so we can visit with you more, and phone numbers, the number of acres that ranch or that book is covering. And then if you would go through and tally up when you turn them in, the number of hunters, how many bucks they shot and how many does they shot. This just gives us a quick, brief overview as I glance through them. I do want to give a shout out. I got these names wrote down to our presidents of our association. Cherry Springs, Mr. Wilfred Greenwuggy, Doss, Corey Brandon, Cave Creek, Cade Burrow, and Harper is Michelle Brandenburg. I know there's lots of other officers that make all this happen, secretaries and treasurers, but without the officer staff that we have, we could not make these wildlife management associations go. And so I do want to give a shout out to all of those officers, and especially those presidents who we rely on pretty heavily here in the office. So the second page is just the names of the hunters that come to hunt, and this is a good place for them to sign in, and this is a good record of who's on your place, and maybe if you have guests come, for them to even date that. This is 2 pages, so if you run out of Scantrons, what we also ask is on that second page, if you need to, if you run out of Scantrons, to put down harvest information on deer, you can start writing it in there. And pretty much we need to know who shot it, what sex it was, and maybe some very broad descriptions can be wrote down there. The next is our every book may be just a little bit different, but the next is going to be the last year's harvest report, and this is just very general. We take all those Scantrons, I send them into A&M, and we get back pages upon pages of documents. And so you should have what was harvested in your association last year. One thing, just broad and general, I do want to point out on these, since we're on this, a lot of the associations this year did shoot more does than bucks, and that has not always been the case. It looks like all of them were about 50 to 100 over in terms of does harvested. But realistically, for the hunting guides that are sent out, or the harvest recommendations that are sent out, that needs to be more like 2 to 1, and that's something we need to strive for. One of the other things Joyce talked about a little bit, we have on there why bucks are harvested. And bucks are harvested, we have meat, management cull, or trophy. And if they mark meat and management cull, or if they mark meat and trophy, then those go to the management cull and the trophy accounts categories. So we only count what is just harvested for meat as meat only. And we had one association this year that had 50% of their bucks harvested for meat only. And when we're trying to increase the bucks in our herd density to the does, that is something we need all of y'all as landowners to really push to your hunters. We even have a questionnaire that went out on why hunters harvested bucks for meat only. And, it was a lot of them go back to the old tradition. They want to harvest a buck. That's just instilled in them. Some of the ones that were surprising but weren't surprising was it cost the same, I guess, to skin and cut up a buck. When you take it to the processor, there's a standard charge there, and a lot of them said it's cheaper if we shoot a buck and we bring a bigger deer in there. Even though they're getting charged by the pound to make their sausage, they're not getting that price to skin it and to gut it is still the same. And so to me, that's pretty minor. So one thing we do want to do, if you need some ideas on how to make your hunters shoot more does, give us a call up here. One thing though, you just got to be forceful with them. I mean, you pretty much just got to tell them either you shoot the does or I'm going to find new hunters next year, and be very forceful with them. There's different ways you can do that. Some do it by point system. If they shoot 2 does or 4 does, then they don't have to shoot 2 next year. So there's different ways we can do that. We can talk over that if somebody wants more ideas. but you do have to be forceful with them, or they just simply, a lot of them just simply won't do it anymore. They're there to harvest a buck. They don't eat a lot of deer meat anymore. Maybe they don't cook a lot at home. We see this even on our own ranch. And so we have been very adamant, and sometimes we're successful and sometimes we're not, but you have to stay with it. So one of the other deals we find out with doe hunting is they all want to hunt their buck first. I understand that concept, but then they want to wait till the holidays, till they maybe have some time there. They're there to shoot their does. And then we've had our hunters come back and say, we just can't find them. I mean, they're there all November when they're hunting their bucks and trying to find a good buck. So anything you can do, any incentive you can to make those hunters shoot those deer early, I think would help in your doe harvest. The next page in that is just to tell you we're moving again, and we're going to reiterate this 2 or 3 times. So December 1 is pretty much the office when we're going to open up at the new office. We're going to be unpacking, but anything after December 1, you need to come across town to the new office. And if you're like me, you're going to probably drive out here to the old office 2 or 3 times before you realize it's moved, but just wanted to give everybody a heads up. Then we have our list of management guides for the deer leases. This is, somebody asked a question about this earlier on. This is a page I put in here when we had about 4 or 5 years ago, we had a discrepancy with one of our hunters on what was allowed on the ranch and what wasn't. And, you know, the leases, they get signed, they get filed, nobody ever looks at them again. And so I developed this page just to put in the book, so you can go down as a landowner, and it's, to me, it's very, you can make any options you want on here. You can scratch stuff out. I tried to make it as open-ended as I could. And so, you know, we don't let our hunters shoot cull bucks, so I'm going to mark no. We don't let our hunters shoot spikes unless we get approval, so I'm going to mark no. You know, bucks without brow tines, again, I don't let my hunters shoot them, because what we found with our hunters, the more cull bucks they can shoot, the less does they shoot. All they want to do is go out there and shoot a buck. And so when we started letting our hunters shoot cull bucks, that is all they wanted to do. They did not bring a doe in. And so then our buck ratio to harvested towards our doe ratio just went through the roof. So we just simply cut out cull bucks and kind of put it on the hiatus for a few years, and we might bring it back. Each hunter may harvest. I highly recommend only 1 buck. If not, if you're letting your hunter shoot 2 quality trophy bucks, then you're leaving money on the table, and you could get another hunter on there to pay that same amount. Then for each buck, each hunter needs to harvest so many does. Predators, you know, we let our hunters, in fact, it's a sin if they come back and said they saw a hog or a coyote and didn't shoot it. That's probably a faster way to get kicked off the lease than by not shooting your does. Exotics, excuse me, are moving in more and more across the county. So we do put in there what they can shoot. You know, maybe you only have 1 or 2 black buck. You don't want them to shoot that, but you want them to shoot all the axis they can harvest. Put that on there. Turkeys, different season. You know, can they hunt turkeys? Some people can, some don't. Bow hunting, you know, if you allow bow hunting, we only allow bow hunting to hunt during rifle season. And so that's one thing that we put on there. And then that last is the member of the Predator Association. If you're a member of the Predator Association, then they can get those different bounty fees paid. And again, the feral hogs have moved to $5. So just wanted to reiterate that. So if you move to the next page, it's the landowner. This is kind of, somebody got a question? Well, the next page is our landowners, and this is what we just write out. This is kind of one of the, I know it's maybe a little confusing, but this is the whole purpose behind our management associations. We have a lot of dedicated people that go out and do the spotlight surveys. Joyce spends hours putting that together. We send them out. And so this is, even though we can tweak it for our individual ranches, we all know every area in the county is not the same. We need to have a plan on what we can. And I'm getting a little feedback, so let me mute everybody again. How about now? We're doing good now. So this is where we just write it out. You can write it right off of Joyce's recommendation. We're going to shoot 1 trophy buck per 100 acres and 2 does per trophy buck. And so that's what these recommendations stand for. Our Axis Deer Control Project, we had that last year where we collected some Axis ears for some DNA research, and I know COVID has kind of put that a little bit on the backside. So we hope to have some more data coming in by hopefully this summer and by next year. And then we just put Donna found this. Excuse me. We put a list of highly preferred deer plants. And we have so many deer here in the county that a lot of these are not listed. You will not find them, or you will not find them in grazing distance for your deer. So if you want to know what deer really prefer and what they go after, you can find that. Excuse me. Then Joyce talked about aging on the hoof and making sure we're shooting that older age class of bucks. We've got that in here. We also have it in the deer guide that the newspaper put out. They have one in there, doesn't have as different many classes, but it has some good color photos there, and it has some stuff that the hunters can look at. Next one is why we talk about harvesting more does. We sure want you to push that with your landowners. Next page is safety concerns with handling feral hogs. Feral hogs carry a lot of different diseases. They're unlike any other wildlife that we have. And so that's one thing when we do process those animals. A lot of us don't wear gloves when we process deer or exotics, but with feral hogs, we really need to be wearing gloves and cook that meat all the way through. And then feral hog exclusions. It amazes me how many landowners come in and said, my feral hogs run off all the deer from my hunters. And I asked them, I said, do you have a 30-inch fence around your feeder where the deer can jump in and the hogs can't? Well, no, I don't. Very simple, quick and easy to do. Once you set it up, it's there. It's going to reduce our litter sizes. It's going to keep feral hogs, attracting them from coming on our property. And so if you're cussing feral hogs and you don't have these around your feeders, then don't come complain to me. It's definitely not going to keep them out, not going to from your pastures, but just something we need to do. Scantrons are next. We've got some buck Scantron sheets in there, and we got some doe Scantron sheets in there. Hunters are doing a much better job filling those out since they've had a year or two under their belt, and we appreciate all that they do on that. So that being said, guys, I am kind of done. If we'll open it up for questions or just for chit chat. Looks like we've still got quite a few participants online, and I think that's a wrap on our end. So if anybody has a question, y'all want to open it up, we'll take a few questions or comments.
Brad, I did want to mention one more thing. Be sure and let everybody know that axes are a major problem. I'm sure the ones of you that have it already know that. If you're in the eastern part of the county, they compete directly with white-tailed deer, and they can be hunted year-round. So encourage your hunters to please remove those animals along with feral hogs.
Good deal. Thank you, Joyce.
Hey, Brad, this is Lee. I had a question. It was in reference to Tiffany's comment earlier, about the lease contracts. We, in our places, we're on about our third or fourth generation of hunters. Some of them have been hunting there, the family since back in the 20s and 30s. And there has never been anything except a handshake. And then I guess just you just trust them. Is this something probably that we ought to go ahead and do? What's the general consensus of everybody here? Is this sort of the same thing, or am I the only one that doesn't do this?
Leland, we've got several hunters that are that way, and we make them all sign a lease every year. I would say at least the agritourism signs are something you need to hang up, and that's going to cover you on a lot of different fronts there. To me, contracts are, I don't know. A lot of people ask if they want to do a contract for a lease, for grazing leases, and I'm like, I'm probably not going to take anybody to court over it if they don't pay, and because it's just everything that I would get out of it's going to get ate up in lawyer fees. So to me, maybe the biggest part's just the liability part there. If you've got maybe exotics or you're changing something, then it's maybe good to get it wrote down. But I don't know. I think on the liability, our hunters have been there a long time. They've showed they can be there. but we still make all of our hunters sign liability agreements at our ranch, even though some of them have been there for 40, 50 years.
Right. Yeah, we have the release of liability forms. We've been doing that for a number of years. And then also, I'm a Farm Bureau board member here. We have those agritourism signs, and I've got them on the main entrances. And I guess I'm quite anal. I go ahead and keep them on all the different pasture gates and stuff like that. So I feel that we're covered there. And I had a hunter, one of the hunters that we have is a lawyer himself. And of course, he says, Leland, we'll sign these. There's no problem at all. But he said so many of these things are so loosely written, they just came and he said, no matter what you do, if you have a hunter that's out to get you, they're going to find a way to slip through this thing.
Yeah. Well, and again, I mean, a lot of the lease licenses a lot of the leases are to make sure you get your money and they do what they want to. If they're doing what you want them to and you're getting paid, then I don't see the issue. So
okay, thanks.
This is Doris and Don Spraggins. We have them sign the leases, and we have them, ours have not been here for 30 years, but maybe up to 10, but they have no problem. And we also, Chris, we've taken many of these courses, several of the courses with Tiffany. So we have the release for the minors if they're younger. And our hunters, I guess they're mostly from Houston, and they're very aware of liability, and they're not concerned at all about signing the leases or signing the waivers. And we have signs up like you do. We have the signs, we have the liability insurance, so we feel like we're covered, but I'm just not going to take any chances.
Doris, good point. I also think I think one thing that covers us a little here in Texas is, and I know there's some cases that probably point to maybe this being false, but we are private landowners here, and if hunters start getting a bad rap about suing landowners are going to kick them off their property. So I think in general, as a whole, hunters know that that if they better not screw up too much. Or they could jeopardize hunting all over Texas. And so I think that's in the back of my mind. I hope that's a good reason why they may not, even if somebody does get hurt or injured on our place, they're maybe not going to come after us. But it is good for the liabilities to be there. All right. Any other questions, guys?
Yes, Brad, I had one more. I was just looking at the harvest records here, from the Cave Creek thing. And I was just wondering here, which of these spotlights was closest to our place? We're out there. Peggy's place is there at intersection of 1323 and 1631. Would that be the Tribes, Willow City? Is that Vernon Tribes going down the loop, or which one of these spotlight lines would be closest to us there?
I'm going to defer to Joyce.
Okay.
Well, I'm not sure where you are, but it sounds like you would be in the, are you in the Willow City area?
Yeah, we're in the Willow City area. Peggy's place is about 3 miles east of Willow City towards Sandy. It's right there where 1631 and 1323 intersect there. And so, it could be on any one of these here, but I'll just look in which one is closer, because there is quite a bit of difference, in the bucks and does on some of these here. And, there's the Tribes Willow City spotlight. And then, there's also, the Klein Orange spotlight. Different ones of them could be close, but maybe, 8 miles away or something like that.
Is somebody from Cave Creek on the call that could help to point him in the right direction where he might be nearest? I see Daryl Moore. Are you there? Anybody from Cave Creek? Because I think it'd be the Tribes, Willow City would be the one nearest you.
Okay, I didn't know if that was Vernon Tribes or that was maybe Kenneth Tribes starting off there at Yenski's place, or where that was. I didn't know.
I think it's Vernon.
It's Vernon. Okay, all right, good. Yeah, that would be the one that would be closest to us then. Yeah, good.
And these are just guidelines, so that I'm not exactly sure where that particular route runs. If it's only on their property, I'm assuming so. Many of the lines and the routes have been set up on county roads, and I know that's true of Harper. Almost all of them are on county roads, and so But in Cave Creek, some of these are still on the actual ranches, and a few are on county roads. So again, it helps more people when they're on a county road, but at least you have a gauge there to use, and then that will be, and we can come help you set one up on your property too. And that's available too. That's a service that we provide, technical assistance.
Right. You know, something that in just looking at these buck and doe ratios here, my son-in-law and I have been doing some bow hunting this year, and we've got cameras all over the place. So if you come out there, don't take a leak. You might get a picture taken of yourself. But in all of the feeders and everything, you know, we see probably 4 bucks to every doe. It seems like out there on our place this year that the does are pretty scarce.
That would be unusual.
Well, Leland, that Cherry Springs also does the spotlight or the stand count surveys, the opening weekend, Leland. And they show that time and time again that bucks, you know, we do these spotlight surveys. They come out that we have a lot more does than bucks, and then their survey comes in from the feeders, and it always shows way more, or not way more, but it shows probably equal bucks to does. And so I don't know if the bucks just like to frequent the feeders more, if they're more demanding, but or push maybe some of the does away. But we do see that. But all in all, for years, our recommendations have all come back with more does than bucks. And so we pretty much tend to stick with that.
Good deal.
Good deal. Well, Leland, you're the only one who wants to talk. Imagine that.
Well, Peggy's been poking me in the ribs, telling me to be quiet here.
No, that's good. Well, guys, if we don't have any more questions, we'll call it a day. Thank y'all for getting on.
Hey, Brad, one more thing. Could Donna go ahead and email out Tiffany's presentation, everybody? That was very interesting. I'd like to go ahead and have references, you know, the different numbers and stuff like that.
Okay, we will do that. We'll it might be a little bit. I need to make sure we don't have anything else to email out, and we will get that out. And we may wait until I get this recording, till I figure out how to get it up where anybody can watch it. So we'll probably wait just a little bit, if that's all right, Leland.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Thanks again. It's a great show here. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Now, Brad, one more question, Brad.
Okay.
Okay. Now you're going to send this because, you know, I have family members that will want to watch this.
Yes. Our hope is we're going to send it as a link because this file is going to be huge for us. So we're going to send it as a link. We're going to post it somewhere on the web, maybe on Tiffany's stuff, and then we'll send a link, and so anybody can watch it that has that link.
Okay. That'll be great. Thank you so much.
All
Brad.
right. Yes, sir.
This is Jerry Lookenbaugh. How are you?
I'm good, Jerry.
Hey, I tell you what, I've been up there at Cherry Springs. We've seen a lot of spikes up there. Is everybody seeing more and more spikes up there? I mean, some of these guys are, you know, right at the ear tips, and there's quite a few that are above that. Do we take out those ones above it, or these?
I'm going to defer to Joyce on what Parks and Wildlife recommends. You know, they're all different. Some people say, yes, shoot them. Some people say don't, but I'm going to refer to Joyce.
So, Jerry, they're definitely inferior deer. What they could be is that they were young fawns. They were born late in the year, and they're just now, you know, have this is their first set of antlers. A lot of people don't like to shoot spikes, trying to see what they're going to become later. But it's been we've had a lot of research conducted at the Kerr Wildlife Management Area, and those deer never become more than about an 8 point. That's not to say they won't be a shooter to somebody at some point in time, but typically spikes and 3-pointers, which is just a fork on one side and a spike on the other, is an inferior quality animal and one that could be removed if you're managing, you know, their quality. And I did make a comment, if you heard that in my presentation, that I think you're going to see a lot more of those this year because of the stressful period they had this summer when they were growing those antlers. So I would expect to see an increase in those. Now, when you harvest those animals, be sure you don't take out every one and start aging them after you harvest them, because if they're all 1.5 year old deer, you could be in danger of wiping out an entire age class of your herd, and that's not good either. So you want to have bucks from all age classes from 0.5 to 6.5 represented in your buck herd age structure. And if you don't have that, then you've got to leave some animals there to do the breeding.
Okay, mainly just look at them and hoof them, age them on the hoof then, huh?
They'll age them by tooth wear, and you can tell that easily when you first find that animal. Look in the mouth and you need to. And that first, they call it a tricuspid premolar. It's the third tooth in their mouth, and it's going to be made up of 3 cusps, and that's
right.
is a year and a half old deer. And after that, that tooth becomes 2 cusped, and so you can easily tell. And I can get some of those aging pamphlets to Brad there if you'd like to pick one up, or I can send it to you. I can do it online.
No, that's fine. I can get it from Brad.
Okay.
Thank you, Jerry.
I appreciate it. Thank y'all for what y'all do. And Leland, you're looking pretty good for an old man with the suspenders.
Boy, I tell you what, yeah, I don't know what it is, but all of a sudden my pants kept falling down. It seems like I have more in front to hold my shirt out and my pants up, so I have to wear suspenders. Hey, I have another quick question for Joyce here. Out at the place at Willow City, there over the last couple of years, we have an abundance of turkeys. And, it doesn't matter whether it's in the morning or in the evening when the feeders go off, immediately we'll have anywhere from 10 to 30 turkeys come in, and they'll clean up the corn, within 3 minutes. And then the deer just sort of stand around there. I have heard these old tales that, you need to shoot in amongst these flocks of turkeys to scatter them and get them gone or whatever. What can we do about it? Because they've almost become a nuisance.
Wow, I've never had that question before. Most people, so you must be on a creek or a riparian area.
Yeah, we have the Willow Creek comes through there, and it has water when it rains. That's about it. It's been dry most of the year, but it's just really frustrating. You're sitting there and the feeder goes off, and here they come, and then, like I say, in 5 minutes they're finished, and then everybody else stands around there hungry.
Well, Leland, you can send them to White Oak if you want to.
Well, yeah, that'll work.
Now, you've got good habitat for them, evidently, and they, in the winter months, they will join forces into large flocks, and so they'll be in the river bottom areas. And if you've got a creek bottom or river bottom habitat, you're going to have
Okay. All right.
They'll move out in the spring. They'll go higher ground, so to speak, for nesting.
Okay.
Then in May, April, March, those times of the year, they're probably gone.
Okay. Good.
You don't notice them.
Well, maybe I'll invite all my friends out and see if both of them can shoot something.
There you go.
Wait. Oh, man.
And
Joyce.
Joyce, I have one more question. This is Doris Spraggins. Could you send me that aging for the,
Sure.
what is it, for the teeth?
For the teeth, the aging by tooth wear, it's a color.
Yes. Because we've never done that. We've just done the chart, with the aging on the way the animal looks.
Well, that's all part of harvest data, collecting that information, because if you're going to be taking animals out of a population, you should know, let it help you, let that information help you in managing down the road. So it's good to do that. It'll tell you a lot about the age structure of your buck herd, the age structure of your doe herd. And so if everything you're killing has almost no teeth, that means you have a very old doe herd, probably.
Okay.
If you have everything with sharp teeth, that means you're young. And so that's probably going to be your bucks. So I'll be glad to send that to you, Doris.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet.
Joyce,
Yes, sir.
this is Jerry Lookenbaugh again. Hey, have y'all noticed has anybody been noticing any deer that looked sickly or anything, or?
I have gotten a couple of calls. I collected some samples from a deer yesterday that was very skinny. And it just, I think a lot of it is they do get a lot of parasites, and some of them could be just really old. It's just hard to know, because I know where you're going with this, and you're worried about chronic wasting disease. I wouldn't worry about that so much because there are a number of diseases that all look the same on the animal. I mean, you can't tell just by looking at that animal if it's ribby that it has CWD or it just has some other ailment. Like the deer yesterday that I collected the samples from, it had a terrible infection. It was hobbling on almost 3 legs. And so I think that's why it was poor. And so a lot of things cause deer to look like that. So, but if you're seeing one, I would encourage you to harvest it and call me, and we'll get a CWD sample from it.
Okay. Well, you were out there, a couple of years back, and you checked that buck that time up at Cherry Springs up there.
If you've got deer going to water and you're finding them around the water, that's probably an indication that it's hemorrhagic disease, which is EHD, or we call it blue tongue. A lot of people call it blue tongue. And that's inherent in our diseases here in the hill country and the whole southeastern United States. But it's a summer disease. And so we should be with the cold weather we're having right now, with cooler weather, that should be passing. That should not happen anymore. So because that disease, it's spread, the vector is a midge, which is a little gnat-like bug. And they infect the animals when they come to water. And so when they bite them and they suck blood, and that's how they infect the deer. But that usually ends when summer ends. So when we're having more rain typically, and when water's standing on the ground, that's why they're around water, because there's a lot of fever with that disease. And so the deer are coming to get water.
Okay.
And they're not on water. So if you're finding, and I don't mean 1 deer, I mean like 5 or 6 deer, that's a bigger deal. And so we would like to know about that if you're seeing that.
Well, I got you in speed dial, so.
Okay, very good. Keep us posted. All our eyes and ears out there. We don't always catch it unless we start getting calls.
Okay, thank you, Joyce.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brad.
This is
Yes.
This is Claudia Parker. I would like to maybe add 2 things in.
Go ahead, Claudia.
Okay. Well, first of all, we happen to be located in Kimball County, real close to that CWD surveillance area, and we are planning, our hunters, we've already talked to them, they're actually going to be volunteering to submit samples this year because of the possibility, that's what we're wondering. We're hoping no, but the possibility. And another thing, we were talking about the aging by tooth wear. I just kind of wanted to, I don't know if everyone knows that Joyce will do this, and I hope I don't get in trouble, her in trouble. But several years ago, it's probably been 6 years ago now, we actually had Joyce come out to our ranch. We had all of our hunters come out. It was in the summertime. I think everybody except for one who was not able to make it. And she basically did a 101 schooling session on them with live aging deer, aging tooth, by tooth wear. And ever since then, our guys were really good about it. They liked it. They like what we're doing. And after that session, we actually had our hunters start extracting jaws to see, well, this is what they thought it was live. Now that we have the jaw out, well, what do we think it really was? Or were we right? And as the years have passed, we're discovering we are almost right on top of what we thought it was when they fired the bullet and put them down. So I encourage people, if you're interested in kind of bumping it up a little bit, a lot of the guys really liked it. They liked what Joyce brought to them. So thank you, Joyce.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you for saying that, Claudia, because I think a lot of people, landowners don't think, the hunters need to take ownership in this too. They're the ones pulling the trigger for you. They're your managers. And if they're not managing the way you want them to, or if they don't even know what they're doing, that's going to be very important. And so Claudia they've taken it an extra step on their ranch, and they're involving those hunters. And so the hunters now feel like they're part of the management program, and they are. I mean, they're the ones that pull the trigger. So we can come speak with your hunters. Hopefully not right now. I mean, give me a few weeks to get season open, and then I could come visit with them on one of the weekends, that they're there. But thanks, Claudia, for saying that.
You're welcome. Yeah, right now we're at that that $1 to every 1.6 does.
Yeah,
I think is what our count was. We're right on top of where we need to be.
And that's not something that happened overnight, did it, Claudia?
No, there was a lot of pushing and prodding, and
It's taken several years.
And it's taken several years before we finally got our doe count down. But we had hunters who wanted to cooperate with us.
That makes a lot of difference there.
Yeah, I think it's called they bought into it. After we brought Joyce out, they seemed to buy into this idea.
All right.
Well,
guys,
Joyce, this is Alan Warchin. I have one last question for
yes,
you.
Sir.
Too. I know y'all mentioned the stand survey that's for Cherry Spring. Was that in the? I have not opened the packet yet that has our lease book in it. Is that in there with that, or is that something we get somewhere else?
I think Willard handed those out the night of the meeting that they had at the Cherry Springs School. But I know that, do you have a number for Willard or for Willard?
No, it should be in their book. Should be in his book.
Should be in the book. Okay,
yes.
But I know they could get you a copy of it.
Great. Well, sure. I can. I'll put my email on the IM or on the chat here real quick. Is that appropriate?
Well, you've already got it in your book. When you open that packet, it should be.
I have it in my book. That's great. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you guys for sticking around, holding on. So I'm going to see if I can shut this thing down and see if I can get the recording, and we'll get it out to those so y'all can share it to other hunters or other family members that need to see it. Appreciate it, guys.